Coming up on today's episode of Real Talk Rentals, we're going to talk the questions that you should be asking when you hire a property management professional. Welcome back to Real Talk Rentals, a podcast brought to you by OnQ Property Management. We're here to walk you through all the secrets of owning an investment property and everything that goes into it behind the scenes. My name is Ben. I'll be your host. And with me, as always, Mr. Eric Dixon, the go-to expert on all things property management. And we're going to be testing that knowledge today, sort of, because we're going to walk through what you should look for when hiring a property management professional. So, Eric, I'm going to have you put on kind of your customer hat and pretend you are shopping in a market that does not have OnQ, the obvious choice.
Oh, yeah.
So let's pretend you inherited an investment property. There's no OnQ in this area. It's in a different state. Self-management, probably not an option. How do you start your search for a property manager? What are you looking for in a property management company?
All right. So yeah, I'll put on customer hat. And then as you're saying that, I'm reminiscing for the first 6 or 7 years here, I was the sales guy who would sign up these new clients or meet with them, answer their questions and so forth. And so, some of their common questions are the questions you need to be asking anyway.
Sure.
So if I inherited a property, I'm looking to hire a management company. The easiest one is, hey, how much does it cost? What do you charge? What do you do for those services? But I don't think that even matters, at the end of the day. Like, most companies are going to charge about the same. And so specifically in Arizona, I know we're not talking about Arizona because you would just hire us, but does this property management company handle your sales tax collection and payment and filing every month? That is a big one that we get asked often, that if you're in a state or a municipality that has rental tax, that's one of the top questions you should have. Because if some of our even competitors, they don't do that on behalf of the client.
Right.
And it's kind of like, why do you have a management company if they don't even file your
tax? Who wants to handle taxes and
your rental tax for you? Another one is, how fast or at what date do I receive my rental income each month?
Okay.
So traditionally, rent is due on the 1st. Are you paying me on the 10th, the 15th? Are you paying me on the 30th of the month after all expenses that month? How quickly does that happen? Is it direct deposit? Is it a check? Is it, is it mailed? Do I have to pick it up at the office?
Sure.
Sidetrack, but we recently took over a property that the owner said that they went to the office to pick up their money from the property management company every month.
Wow.
And so they just signed up with us and have direct deposit now.
Yeah.
Like it's the year 2023.
It's wild because I wouldn't think of asking that right away, but then it's like, well, if you're an owner and you got to pay your own bills, you got to pay your mortgage and stuff, you need to know when you can expect that money.
Yeah. And so these are more proactive questions, right?
Right.
One way or the other, you're going to find out when they pay you.
Yeah.
But why not, if you're shopping 2 or 3 companies and you have a little spreadsheet or a little, you're writing it down, say, oh, this company pays on the 10th. This one pays on the 20th. This one is 90 days past cleared checks or, whatever.
Yeah.
So that's one I would definitely ask. How often are inspections? Okay. So, whether that's the move-in inspection, the move-out inspection, the routine inspections throughout the lease. If it's vacant on the market, how often are they seeing the property? Those are common questions that you would want to know, and how are they documenting those? A big one would be, how do you handle maintenance, maintenance issues, whether it's routine or proactive maintenance that you're doing, like an AC tune-up or a heater tune-up every year, or it's just, hey, if the tenant calls and says my water heater doesn't work.
Yeah. And it's not uncommon for some companies to add an additional fee on top of that to mark it up.
Yeah. So not only how do you handle it, but how much does it cost? Right.
So
some of them it's per instance, or it's like, hey, if you want us to handle your maintenance, it's this much more a month in management, or it's this higher percentage. So just finding out, hey, these common scenarios with maintenance, how are those handled? And with maintenance, I'd also find out how they handle nights, weekends, and holidays. So basically, if something happens at 10 o'clock at night, is somebody answering the phone or getting back to you same day, or are they waiting until the next business day? For us, we're on call 24/7. So night, weekend, holiday, there's somebody there, especially in Arizona where AC in the summer is a huge deal.
Yeah. You can't go through the night.
You can't go through the night when it's 100 degrees outside at midnight.
Yeah.
But even doesn't matter where you live, water related issues, floods and fires, like there need to be somebody on call.
And not just for the resident or the tenant in that property, but also for the protection of your investment, right? If a pipe breaks Friday night and you're telling me you're not going to get to them on Monday.
Until Monday.
Yeah. So my house is flooding for like 72 hours. That's crazy. But that is the case with some of them.
No, and it is the case. And it's like, if those are the companies that are managing it, you're leaving it up to the tenant to make decisions because they're not going to just let it leak all weekend. They're going to hire somebody or they're going to bootleg it themselves.
Yeah.
And so that's a big one. I made a couple notes just in case here. How long would it take to lease my house? So if I inherited this house and whatever in the middle of the Midwest somewhere, and I have no idea what the market is, I want to know from a professional, hey, how long is it going to take to lease?
Right.
In some places, a month vacant is average.
Yeah.
In some a week is average or longer. So how long is it going to take to rent? What does that process look like? Do you do background checks? Do you do sex offender checks, eviction history, landlord history? Do you check their pay stubs? Do you check their bank statements? All that stuff. So how in depth is it?
That's got to be like talking to Matt, friend of the podcast, as I call him. He says that's his number one question is like, how long does it take to get someone in my house?
Oh yeah. Because to them, they're like sitting vacant. Again, we hit it hard every week, but vacancy costs them the most.
Yeah.
They've got mortgages, utility bills, HOA dues. That stuff keeps going, whether it's rented or not, And so how long does it take to rent my house? You'll find out that the company that could rent it the quickest to the best tenant, balancing that, is likely going to be just as expensive or less expensive than somebody else.
Sure.
Because vacancy is going to be limited. So even if their fees are a little bit higher, they may save you more money because they'll rent it quicker.
Right.
So I take that into account. One thing that's important to us that I would want to know is if you have a physical office. I know we're moving in this direction of work from home and virtual and stuff like that, but a brick and mortar office where push comes to shove, I need to talk to somebody face to face, or if my tenants need to, that's important. If the property management company is run out of a house and the mailing address is a PO box, and so there's no physical address, it's not necessarily a red flag, but it could be.
Or if they're not in the market, you think like if you if you have an office in Tucson, but you're allegedly managing a property in Flagstaff, right? It's like, we know that is way too far. Nobody's going out to that property.
Yeah, no one's going to the property, and the property manager managing it isn't in the market. They don't understand the vacancy and the marketing and all that stuff. So, I mean, we've taken over a property where the owner quit because the home base was out of Oakland, California, managing properties in Arizona. And he's like, dude, my property manager, great person, man, she's so nice. But she lives in California.
She's probably killing it in Oakland, managing those properties. But here, it's a whole different world.
And so Arizona, and we were like, oh, dude, we're local. We've got a big office, big team. We're local. So that's important to me. That kind of goes with who's going to be my main contact. Mm-hmm. I would ask that. Am I going to be tossed around to a different person in the phone queue every time I call? Or am I going to have hey, Ben is my property manager. He's the main contact. In his absence, yes, the team will help you, but having that main contact would be important.
I was surprised to find that there are property management companies that have like kind of a call center setup where you don't have an assigned person. No, you would think that would just be standard, but there are places that operate that way.
I liken it to like DirecTV or like Dish Network type of thing where I've called DirecTV 1,000 times for issues, right? And you get a different person every time. I feel like I have to re-explain everything. Hey, just look my notes up in the file.
Yeah.
Hopefully the previous phone call took the notes.
And the only way you get anything done is if you tell them you're going to cancel.
Yeah.
And then they boot you to their
recovery center.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
And so you don't want that with your property management company that's managing your $500,000 asset. That's like, hey, I want somebody who cares.
Right.
And that kind of just goes to the fees almost being not even relevant, because when you're talking about a $500,000 or $1 million property, or even $250,000, hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
What is tens of dollars or hundreds of dollars to make sure it's done right?
Yeah.
Just a couple more that I would make sure and ask: if it's required, are they licensed? Did you look it up? Like, hey, are they licensed in Arizona? For example, I'm the broker in Arizona for the management company. And so and then underneath me are the licensed property managers. And that's a requirement in Arizona. And then what's your take on pets? You know, and so pets are a big thing. We hit it hard in the podcast, but 75% of our tenants have pets.
Yeah.
Just this week, my dad, we managed a property for him, and it rented in about a week and a half. He's super excited. And they had 2 pets. And my parents aren't pet people. You know, they've never had pets. I grew up in a house without pets. We love pets that aren't ours. That's kind of what.
Yeah. You love to visit them.
Dogs. I love visiting dogs.
Yeah.
I just don't. But he's like, oh yeah, the first applicant, they were great. They qualified, and they had 2 Chihuahuas. Awesome. And it rented quick because he was open to pets.
Sure. So would you say from a property management inspection point, then you'd want them to know, like, do they have a policy in place?
Yeah. Do they have a policy or a recommendation to follow? Right. Because if you go into it blind, I want no pets. Well, you want them to say, hey, if you do no pets, it's not going to rent. Or, hey, you actually don't need to. Or, hey, most of our properties do accept pets, or whatever it is.
Or if you have pets, there's a pet rent, an extra amount to cover that.
Yep. And so those are the type of questions, though, you're going to want to call and kind of shop these management companies and say, hey, let me ask them these 8 or 9 questions, see how comfortable they are answering them, see if it's black and white, or if they're kind of just like, oh yeah, Ben, we can do whatever you'd like. Then it's like, that's too generic. I want somebody who can say, no, this is what we do. We pay you this month. These are our fees. Yes, this is what we do with pets. This is our application process, and go from there.
All right. Well, my next question, I feel like you've hit on it a bunch in that thing, but how important is fee structure in this process? There's that seems to be, I said lease up was the most common question, but probably number one really is, how much does it cost?
And that is common too. They'll just call and say, what are your fees?
Oh yeah. Or we get emails. I get them. People send emails, fill out our forms on the website, and those all come to me, and I get 10 a day. Can you just send me your fees over? Yeah.
And it's kind of like, there is value, obviously, in getting the best value you can for the service. And we want to provide a good value, but we also want to explain the value proposition before we tell you the fee. So you understand, oh, OnQ does it like this, or property management company B does it like this. And so I can't speak for companies out of our market, but I can tell you that most companies are within a pretty thin margin. We're about the same. We charge differently for different services. Yeah. But you have to look at what those fees include. So even if we're the same cost as somebody else, we provide more value. And so you want to look at like how important that is. Again, and I'll hit it, this is the second time in 10 minutes, but the intangibles and the vacancy is going to cost you way more than the fees for a management company. 1 month vacant will cost you more than your annual fees oftentimes. Sure. If your rent's $2,000, your annual fees are less than that to do everything. And you could do all the bells and whistles. So you want to make sure you have a property management company that can deliver on all of the things that they do, all the services quickly and efficiently, so it doesn't sit vacant for 3 months. If it sits vacant for 3 months, they could, they're going to make it up, or you'll lose and they'll still get their fees. I would say the one thing that doesn't necessarily cost money, it's an intangible, is the communication and the response time. Right. So kind of gauge that as you're talking to either the salesperson or the property manager, whoever you're talking to. If they're taking 4 days to get back to you and you're a brand new customer, not even signed up yet,
it's a red flag.
It's a red flag. The writing's on the wall, right? Like they're going to take 4 days to get back to you. If they're on the ball, and there are cases where the salesperson's great and the property manager's not, but you'd like to think that as a company, the culture is the same and across all aspects of the business. Hey, if they respond, the property manager's got to be the same way, Yeah. And then I would just make sure that there's transparency so that there's no hidden fees. And I make sure to, read through the owner's agreement or the management agreement and say, oh, Ben explained to me all these fees, but what are all these ones in fine print on page 2, like in the bottom right corner, Yeah. And just make sure the transparency is key, I think. Yeah.
Kind of related to this, I years ago worked for a burger restaurant. It's In-N-Out. I worked for In-N-Out, right? If you're on the West Coast, In-N-Out. And people a lot of times say, why don't you guys have a dollar menu? And they would say all the time, a double-double, which is kind of their main burger, a double-double is worth what it costs. That's it. Like what you're going to get, and they charge, are they the most expensive? Not by far. Are they the cheapest? Not even close.
Yeah.
But they say this is what it's worth, and we're not going to discount it.
Yeah.
We're not going to give it away for cheaper because we know what it's worth. And there is value in that. I think when you go places, if someone's willing to say, oh yeah, we'll only charge you $5 a month, it's like, okay, why would they only charge me $5 a month? You know, what are they getting out of this?
Yeah. And I guess there's a customer for every scenario, right? Like even with the burger, like how often do they go in and somebody's like, oh, so you're not going to give me a discount, and they walk out.
Yeah.
Like, no, usually they're like, do you know what? Okay, I wanted to ask to try and get a discount, but I'll get it, you know?
Yeah.
But there are some people that are like, no, I just want the $1, what is it? The McDonald's burger that's $1.
Yeah.
Cheeseburger. It's like, it's the cheapest. It's still food. I'm still going to get full.
And they'll be perfectly happy.
And they'll be perfectly fine, right? But it's kind of like, well, we didn't want that customer anyway, because we can't please them. We can't lower the price or whatever. And that, that's a great analogy. A burger is a burger is a burger. Just like management companies is a management company. We all kind of do quote the same thing. Yeah. It's just the quality, the efficiency, the bells and whistles, the technology behind it. That's all what's going to make the difference.
Okay. So you've talked me into, we're signing up with this company. You've made your decision.
Perfect.
How do you know they're doing a good job? Like, what would you as a customer look at and say, okay, I'm satisfied with this experience?
Yeah. And the question that comes to mind is when clients will ask, especially right before they sign up, they're like, well, look, Eric, everything you've said is great, but how often are we going to hear from you? Or how often are we going to hear from my property manager? Yeah. And I always tell them, I'm like, the less you hear from us, the better things are going. Right. And they chuckle like, ha, ha, ha. No, but seriously, how often am I going to hear from you? And it really is like throughout the month, if you're getting your monthly statement and your direct deposit every month, that means there was no maintenance, rent came in on time, and everything's good. And so it's like, you're going to have months and months and months. You could have months and months and months, maybe even the whole year if they pay on time and there's no maintenance issues. Sure. We like to check in a few times on top of that, with routine inspections and different things. But I'd say at a bare minimum, you want to make sure, am I getting interaction, whether it's a phone call, an email, or an automated statement, at least monthly. Right. Very minimal. And you have to assume that, hey, if I get my rent check on time and I get my statement and my direct deposit or my check in the mail or whatever you're doing, that has to mean everything is going smooth. Yeah. And what happens is when you have a new relationship with a property management company, you're slowly building on trust, right? And we have this when investors will come and bring on, especially like a dozen or 20 or 30 or 50 properties. Right. It's a big, huge move over. And over time, we build this trust. And now we're 2, 3, 5, 10 years into managing this portfolio. And it's like the owner and the property manager are friends, and they're going back and forth. And it doesn't mean you have to have 50 homes. I only say that out, throw that out there because they are trusting us, whether it's one home or 50 homes, to manage a huge asset and a huge portfolio. And it takes time. It's not the first month you do the first thing right. And they go, oh, do you know what? Take my property, do whatever you want. It takes a lot. And then it gives the property manager bandwidth to make decisions if the owner's not responding. Yeah. They're like, do you know what? I know Ben well enough. He would totally make this repair. It's an emergency. It's under the threshold. We got to get this done. Right. And then you call back, you go, hey man, I was on vacation. Thanks for handling that. Yeah. Instead of what are you doing with my money? Yeah. So I love when we create that trust relationship. You want to be able to sit back and relax. That's the reason you hire a management company, right? Yeah. So you don't have to do all this. Yeah. If you want to be in the weeds and you want to get the phone calls and the texts and the emails and the irate tenants and the issues, you're a self-manager anyway. Right. You just do your thing, And so if a property management company can't provide that to you, the time away, time with your family, so you don't have to worry about it, then I would maybe even self-manage might be your solution. Yeah. I think another thing that's important too, and you kind of touched on it, was like with inspections and stuff like that, is it going to be a phone call every time, or do you have a portal? Like I know at OnQ we have a portal where they can log into, they don't have to talk to anybody if they don't want to, and say, oh, okay, here's a bunch of photos. Here's how the property's doing. Or if they don't have a portal, do they have to get on the phone and talk to them and say, hey, I'm going to email you some stuff to look at? This is kind of the shameless plug, right? Yeah. OnQ, because this is where what sets us apart is that portal. And it's like, you can be a high touch owner or you can be a sit back and relax owner.
Yeah.
And you both love the portal because
Yeah.
you can log in every day or you can log in once a year.
Yeah. I know you and I are extremely online people. So
Yeah.
for us, it's like, I couldn't imagine signing with somebody where it's like, I don't want to get on the phone, man. I don't
Yeah.
want to talk to you. I want to just log in and see it. Show me how to look at everything myself.
Yeah. And where we're coming from is instead of our clients calling and say, hey, when was the last time you did a routine inspection or you got in the home?
Right.
Well, log into the portal, go to the inspection tab, and every routine inspection is uploaded there with all the pictures, the dates, timestamps, and it's all in there. Now, if there's issues, pick up the phone. Let's schedule a call. Let's get this going. But a lot of times it's not even issues. It's just like, hey, I was just wondering.
Yeah.
I was just wondering when the move out is. I was wondering when oftentimes they'll call, what's the lease end date again?
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, let me walk you through your portal.
Yeah, it's all in there.
It's all in there, you know? And so again, that's a shameless plug for OnQ. That's not necessarily the reason of the episode, but there are companies that offer very similar solutions or different things that you got to have online access. You should be able to access every single part of your management agreement, your services from your cell phone, your iPad, your laptop. So super important.
Okay. So last scenario I want to throw at you here. Let's say you inherited this property. It's in another state. You do some Google searches. There's just nobody managing in that area. So you have no choice but to self-manage. You can't sell this thing or don't want to yet. How do you handle that? What would be your steps if you're going to self-manage a property that you can't physically be at all the time?
Yeah. Fair question. I've self-managed for many years, right? And it's hard because I'm biased, right? I'm was an agent, then a broker, management company, so it's hard for me to remove myself, but I experienced managing a home in a fourplex and a couple houses 15 minutes away from my house. It's doable, man. It's doable, but I had access to leases in the MLS. I had, access to agents and friends in real estate. So it was like, dude, this is easy and I can kind of bootleg it and I can kind of run over and get rent, but I had no portals for my tenants. I had to collect cash or money orders or checks that would bounce into my personal checking account. Like it's just like a mess.
Yeah.
But you can do it and you can actually do a really good job self-managing. I just don't even know how somebody would consider it if they're a plane ride away. Like I was 15 minutes away.
And it was hard enough.
And it was hard enough, right? And the tenants are like, hey, this is going on. And you try and justify like, well, I could save money if I don't have to call the electrician, almost electrocuted myself, that sort of stuff. But I would look at it like, what is my time worth? Is there enough cost savings and time savings to justify self-managing if there absolutely is no solution? If you have to do it yourself, I would see there are some online tools that you pay per instance, like background checks and, you could do Zelle or, Venmo or something. You could digitize some of it and make it not totally crazy, but, at the end of the day, I'd say just hire a property manager.
Yeah.
But if you own a rental where there's no management companies, it's probably a small obscure town anyway. And maybe it's so low key that it's not a big deal.
Sure. It kind of strikes me that you would probably just have to assume all those original questions that you listed out.
Yeah.
How am I going to do that?
No, you're like, how am I going to handle maintenance? Sit back there and go,
yeah,
I'm just going to Google maintenance, or how am I going to do an eviction? Well, I'm going to go to the courthouse and ask them for the paperwork.
Yeah. So you got to ask yourself all those questions.
Yeah.
And if you can't do them, it's like, man, I got to find somebody in the market who can.
I guess that's true. You're like, what questions would you ask a manager?
Yeah.
And then we list 10. Like, well, what are you going to do if you self-manage? Ask yourself those 10 questions.
If you're able to do them all, then keep the property. Don't sell it.
And that's what I found is if I had an issue, being in the real estate industry, I've got painters, roofers, contractors, every trade. I've got relationships with leasing agents. And so I was able to self-manage and it was still kind of difficult, but I was able to swing it. I can't imagine if it's just like me and the world out there. Like me and Google, and
that's it.
Yeah. Every time I need somebody, you post online, hey, does anybody have a roofer? I have a roof leak.
Yeah.
On a Saturday afternoon,
Let me ask you a question. This is not on here, so I'm springing this on you randomly. But since you were saying your connections as a realtor, if you're going into a market where there is no property management, is it worth calling a realtor, say in the area, and being like, can I pay you to help me with this?
And
or something?
and so oftentimes that's even the case locally. Is I know realtors out here that that do property management, and they're licensed, and they kind of just say, hey, yeah, I kind of collect rent and do the leases for like 4 or 5 of my friends, or
Sure,
a couple clients to retain the relationship. Hopefully there are management companies out there that will honor your relationship with your agent, and then you can help with the management. But that is a valuable tool, right? You could say even the agent who helped you buy it, or find an agent and say, hey, do you know either a property manager or an agent that could at least handle the basics for me?
Yeah.
And I'll still be highly involved, but I could manage it from afar. That's a great point.
All right. Okay. Well, I think
I have one question for you.
Yeah.
You told me yesterday that you had a horror story. What was that?
Oh man. About self-managing?
Yeah. You had a horror story about your in-laws or something. You're like, hey, I'll tell you tomorrow.
Oh man. I do. My in-laws. Okay. So my in-laws own.
I just made a mental note of that. So
no, I'm glad you did.
I hope
I'm glad you did.
I hope the story's worth it.
So my in-laws, very similar situation. They live in Georgia, and they owned a home in California, a world away. And they'd had it forever. It was their home in California, and they moved to Georgia. And for whatever reason, because they own properties in Florida, they own a couple in Georgia, they use property management companies for all those, but they didn't for their home in California. So we're just going to self-manage it. We rented it to a good family.
Keep California, tenant-friendly laws.
Yeah, we're fine. We're fine.
Good.
We got it. So 6 years or so go by, and they're just collecting rent. They figure everything's fine. It's good. They come out there to visit some family one time, and my father-in-law's like, you know what? I'm going to call up the tenants and I'll go by the house. Check it out. I haven't been there in 6 years. He gets to the house. He doesn't know anybody in there. It's a whole different family. There's like 20 people in there. The house is destroyed.
No exaggeration, 20 people?
Easily. He said there was like 4 or 5 people per room sleeping. Like it was, and he didn't know any of them. He's like, I don't know who's paying this rent, but nobody here.
But the rent's been paid for 6 years.
Yeah, but the house was destroyed. So they ended up getting rid of, evicting people and then just selling it.
No, that's the self-managing nightmare, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, and that is what, a 5-hour plane ride away or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's like the rent showed up, so you think everything's fine, right?
Yeah.
So dude, that's great.
Yeah. He shows up and knocks on the door and goes, is Frank here? And the guy goes, who? Like they didn't even know.
They moved in and they're like, hey, just Venmo or email this guy the rent.
Yeah. Well, I think they were sending their rent to the original tenant. He was sending it to my father-in-law. So these guys are literally like, I don't know who you're talking about. Like, no, you don't own this house. We pay this guy.
Oh, dude, and he's probably collecting way more than he's paying your.
Oh yeah, exactly, right. Well, there's 20 people in there. You get a lot for that.
No, that's just you'll end it there as hire a property manager.
Hire a property manager.
Figure it out.
Yeah, my father-in-law's a smart guy. I don't know. I hope he doesn't listen to this, but I don't know why he did that. Not a good decision. All right.
Oh, good.
So that's it for us. Be sure to subscribe to the show and leave us a 5-star review if you can. It really helps out. And we will see you guys next time.